Hello, everyone. For the month of October, each week I'm going to be covering a new horror comic. So every week it's going to be a new book that we can go through the introductory volume on. So I hope you all enjoy the various books I'm going to be going through this month. This first one is called Die, written by Kieron Gillen, and I think it is one of the most unique comics I've ever read. This is pretty cool, the concept. So the concept of this book is you got these 6 teenagers and they play this Dungeons and Dragons type game called Die, and they get sucked into the game, kind of like Jumanji. They get sucked into this game of Die, and they are stuck there for a few years. They eventually get out of it, but when they are adults, they have to go back into the game. And that kind of reminds me of It from Stephen King, how they had to go fight this clown again. So they kind of have to go back into this horrific world as adults. And yeah, very cool premise. One thing also really interesting about this Die comic is that Kieron Gillen, he's kind of a nerd with like Dungeons and Dragons roleplay game kind of stuff. And he actually made official rules for Die. All the classes and how you yourself at home can play a game of it. And on his website, he has various PDFs you can download that breaks this all down. So that's all really interesting. I read through some of it. And yeah, I'm going to put a link in the description of this video if you want to go check out some of the official rules to Die. All right, so let's dive into it now. Die Volume 1. Die Volume 1 Fantasy Heartbreaker, written by Kieron Gillen and art by Stephanie Hans. Issue 1. The Party. The year is 1991. Dominic Ashe and Solomon, or Saul, are best friends and they share a birthday. They are both turning 16 years old. For a party, Saul thought it would be fun to invite some of their friends over and play a Dungeons and Dragons type game he invented called Die. As in dice, not as in dying. So one weekend night, Saul has his friends over to his basement for this party/game. The 6 friends that will be playing the game are Dominic Ashe, Angela Ashe, who is Dominic's younger sister. Her dog recently died, and Dominic wanted to bring her along so she could have some fun. She wants to be a cyberpunk character when they play. There is Matt. He is smart, painfully smart. One of the few black kids in town. His mom died, and he is sometimes very depressed. At least out of the group, he is the most depressed one. There is Chuck. He is basically John Belushi in Animal House. He is the crazy party guy. There is Isabel. She is French adopted, bilingual, and aggressive. She is dating Saul. And finally, there is Saul, and he is dating Isabel, and he is the game master. He created the world of the game they are going to play. All of the friends get together in Saul's basement, and Saul hypes them up for the game he made. He tells them, "Guys, you don't get it. It's not some piece of D&D off-the-shelf shit in a box. This isn't a dungeon bash. This isn't 10 by 10 rooms of orc genocide bullshit. This is Thomas Covenant. This is RPG Watchmen. Hell, this is Gormenghast. You have no idea how good this will be. This is fantasy for grown-ups." Everyone is pretty excited to play this game. Saul has them develop their characters, select their abilities, etc., etc. And then Saul pulls out some special dice, and he tells the group, "Okay, everyone done? Now for the special sauce, the dice. Tell me about yourself." Dominic Ashe, despite being a male in real life, decides that his character in the game will be female. Cross between Cleopatra and Machiavelli. A diplomat with teeth. Saul says, "Alright, your character class is the Dictator. She can manipulate people's emotions and convince them to do her bidding." Dominic, he gets the D4 dice. Chuck says, "I picked random abilities. I'm just gonna have fun." Saul makes Chuck the fool. As long as he isn't serious, his character will be granted an unusual degree of luck in his actions. Chuck will get the D6 dice. Matt says that he's kind of like a magical warrior, turning emotions into power. It's pretty metal, or goth even. Sol says that Matt will be the Grief Knight. He will get the D8. Soon we will learn later that the Grief Knight becomes more powerful the sadder he becomes. Angela Ash, she just wants to be a cyberpunk character. So she is a class known as a Neo, which is sort of like a cyberpunk rogue character. She can control machines and teleport around, and her abilities are all powered by something called Fair Gold, which is the gold of the elves within the game. She gets the D20 dice. Isabel, laughing, says that her character is some kind of atheist with gods for pets. Sol says, okay, you're something called a godbinder, which is sort of like a cleric as a demonologist. She can demand favors from the 12 gods, each representing different elements and ideas, and she must perform favors for them in return. She gets the D12. Dominic asks, what about Sol? Does he get to play a character too? And Sol, holding the D20, says, yep, I'm the master. The kids roll their dice and begin playing, and it's not ever really explained. Maybe the dice was magical or whatnot, but somehow they get sucked into the world of die. 2 hours later, Sol's mom goes to check on the kids, and they are all missing. Disappeared. Where did they go to? 2 years later, the kids show up again, finally. They were spit out near some road, and Angela, she's missing her arm now, and Sol is not with them. A woman almost runs them over with her car, but she stops her car and she gets out and she asks, wait, weren't you kids on the telly? You're the ones that disappeared, the Stafford Six. But there's only 5 of you, who's missing? And where's her arm? Dominic answers, I can't say. Why can't he say? Why can't any of them say what happened to them? But they will never speak of what happened to them ever. 25 years later. Dominic is now 40 years old. He is married to a woman named Sophie, and he works in marketing. Dominic is visited by Sol's mother one day, and she begs him to please tell her what happened to her boy all those years ago. She says to Dominic, it's been 27 years, Dominic. Please, after all this time, show a mother some mercy. I have no hope. I just want to bury Solomon before they bury me. Dominic pleads that he can't say anything. Sol's mother gets angry and lashes out at him. Dominic is saddened by it. Dominic's sister Angela, she ended up becoming a computer coder, and she works in video games. She was married to a man named Rupert, and left Rupert for a woman named Susan. But shit got pretty real for Susan, and Susan left Angela, and Rupert wouldn't take Angela back. So now she's alone and getting divorced, and she has 2 kids in a custody battle that will not be very fun. Dominic is having drinks with his sister Angela one night, and he receives a mysterious package at the bar they are in. It is a birthday present for him. He opens the present, and inside is a bloody D20 die, the same magical die that transported him and all of his friends into that game world many years ago. Dominic, he storms out of the restaurant. He is upset. He is crying. He talks with his sister Angela, and they decide that they have to tell the others. It is all of their decisions what they should do. Eventually, they all meet at Chuck's house. Chuck, he lives in a mansion. He had 3 failed marriages, he is estranged from his kids, but he is a rich, famous novelist. He wrote some fantasy books, and they were turned into a film franchise. Chuck welcomes Dominic and Ash into his home. He introduces them to his current wife, Fiona, who is 20 years his junior. Chuck brings Dominic and Angela over to another room where Isabel and Matt are already waiting. Isabel is divorced, and she teaches English literature at a high school. Matt, he is married with 2 kids, and he teaches statistics at a university. They all get reacquainted and talk about where their lives are now. But after the small talk, they decide to get down to business, and they discuss the bloody die that Dominic received. Could their friend Saul still be out there alive in that world? Should they give the die over to the police? But they decide against this. They figure, look, the second we give this thing over to the police, it's out of our hands. It's not as if they're going to let us keep it or, I don't know, do whatever with it. They all look at and inspect the die. And then they hear some words saying, "Once more the Grandmaster threatens the realm, and the land calls for a hero. Is it you?" They then all get magically sucked into the game world of Die, the very same game they all played 25 years ago. The very same game they were trapped in for 2 years when they were teenagers. The same game that their friend Saul has never left. So they are sucked back into the game, and they are transformed into their characters once again. Isabel, the Godbinder, Matt, the Grief Knight, Dominic, the Dictator, Angela, the Neo, and Chuck, the Fool. Matt says, I can't do this again. Angela says that she's got to pick up her kids today. She can't be doing this. Angela comments how she is still unable to talk about this place. She tells Dominic, "You did this, you can fix it." Dominic casts a spell saying, "To speak of this place is no longer shit upon the tongue." The spell worked. They can now speak freely. The reason they were unable to talk about their times in this world was because Dominic cast a spell upon them that barred them from ever speaking of it. They were magically barred from saying anything for the last 25 years. But now that Dominic is the dictator once again and reversed the spell, Chuck decides to test it out. He says, "Testing, 1, 2, 3. We disappeared into a fantasy realm for 2 years." Wow. We can actually talk about it again. They start arguing about Saul and how they can get home. And eventually, Saul reveals himself. Saul tells the group, "The previous Grandmaster trapped me. He tried to break me, make me hand over my die. I resisted. I escaped. We had a war, a long war. Finally, I killed the weakling. I took his die and added it to my own. I'm the Grandmaster now, and you're not leaving till you finish the game." Issue 2, Players. Dominic narrating tells us what went down all those years ago when they were in the game when they were kids. The previous Grandmaster told them how to escape the game. If they all wished together in unison to go home, they would be allowed to go. However, the previous Grandmaster was bending the rules. He would only let them go if they all became his prophets, spreading the word about this world to others, in the hopes that other real people would get sucked into this world, sucked into the game. Dominic and his friends were never going to agree to that. So instead, they stormed the previous Grandmaster's fortress and took him down. And then Dominic magically cast a spell that made it so they couldn't tell anyone else about this place. They did this to protect themselves from becoming the Grandmaster's prophets and sucking other people into this world. Once that was done, all 6 of them together wished to go home. They almost all escaped, but the previous Grandmaster wasn't fully dead. He got up, he put his hands on Saul's shoulder, and he held him back. That is why the 5 of the kids got sent back home out of the game, but Saul has been there ever since. Saul has been in the game world for over 25 years. He eventually defeated the previous Grandmaster and became the new Grandmaster himself. Dominic tells Saul, "I know you're angry." Saul replies with a slightly maniacal smile, symbolizing how far gone he is. He says, "Angry? I'm not angry. I'm sorry. Sorry it took me so long to bring you back. It took me so long to finally kill the Grandmaster. He wanted my die to connect the two worlds. We were right about the spell, Dominic. The more people who knew, the more people would be dragged here. His plans for them were monstrous, but we've won. He's dead. We can play. Fantasy is ours, now and forever." Saul, he wants to play a game. The rest of them do not, and they argue against it. Dominic knows that Saul is not just going to let them go. Saul is not even listening to their various protests against playing. He is a railroading NPC, giving the players a briefing they cannot skip. Saul tells them, "Your dreams will kindle, Neo. You'll remember. I have wrought such wonderful things for you. So much, from Angria to Glasstown. All has been prepared for your coming. The Dreamlands, Eternal Prussia. Oh, I must contain myself. You must wait. Such dungeons and delights and sorrows. Look what I've done to the realm of one. When we were first here, it was all light and joy, and now we're fading into the sepia desert of age. See, I even have a theme. You can never go home." Dominic angrily says, "Yes, we can freaking go home, Saul." Saul tells them, "Well, we can all go home if we all agree. Defeat the Grandmaster and then we'll see." Saul, he then disappears. The group figures they can't go home until they either defeat Saul or get him to agree to come back home with them. All of a sudden, an NPC arrives and shouts out to them. The female NPC says, "Hail, adventurers, you have returned. I come with grave tidings." The NPC is an elf queen. Saul, when he created the game, designed her based on a girl they went to school with named Maria, whom they kind of had a crush on. All the boys had crushes on her. The elf queen says, "The Grandmaster threatens the realm. You are our only hope. A waking nightmare has engulfed the Dreaming Lands. I alone remain of the council," and Chuck, the fool, he starts talking to the beautiful elf queen. He asks, "What reward will there be if they help?" The elf queen hints at a romantic reward, and Chuck comments, "Oh, I like that." Chuck, with his sword, then cuts the elf queen in half. Chuck's friends are dumbstruck. Why would he do that? Why would he kill her? Chuck tells them, "Wait for it." All of a sudden, the elf queen turns into something called the Fallen. The Fallen are kind of like the undead. Chuck says to the group, "Of course she was a Fallen. As if the elf princess was ever gonna bang me." That fallen elf springs up with several other fallen comrades, and our group of heroes now have to fight these fallen back. Chuck, he rushes at the fallen. Chuck, he has simple abilities. As long as he does things with the right swashbuckling attitude, things usually work out okay for him. The rest of them, though, kind of have to power up their powers. Isabel, the Godbinder, she talks to one of her gods. Isabel's powers are that she can demand favors from the 12 gods, each representing different elements. However, she must perform favors for them in return. Isabel talks to this bear god and says that the bear god owes her a favor from before. So the bear god helps her and powers her up and gives her these kind of bear-like powers, and they attack the fallen with them. Angela, the Neo cyberpunk, she requires fair gold to power herself up. The fair are kind of like cyberpunk elves or something. Chuck, he just so happens to find some fair gold and he gives it to Angela. And Angela, she appears to insert the fair gold into the back of her neck, and it activates her core systems, and she is powered up, and her cybernetic arm is active and back. One big problem with the fair gold is that every morning her equipment is dead as the fair gold turns to dust, and she is left craving the next hit of gold to be powered up again. For right now, though, Angela has some of her Neo powers back, and she starts fighting the Fallen. Dominic tells Matt, the Grief Knight, that they need his blade. Matt's powers comes from emotion. Matt says he can't use the blade. He doesn't feel like that right now. He doesn't feel sad. Dominic, though, he is the dictator, and he can manipulate people's emotions and say things to control people. Dominic casts a spell by saying, "Tears on the casket rain on your face." And Matt, he cries of it and becomes sad. He hates Dominic for manipulating his emotions like that, but his blade gets powered up by his grief. Dominic tells him, "I'll do anything to get you home to your family. Hate me later, save us now." Matt, with his blade powered up, joins the fight against the Fallen. Matt with his blade, Angela with her fair gold, Isabel with her pact with the gods, and Chuck rushing in like a fool. Together, they defeat the Fallen easily. Once that is over, they have decided where to go next. They will have to head to Saul's domain to try and reason with him or defeat him. And they will try and get there with as few bullshit diversions as possible. How will they get there, though? They have two potential paths they could take. The most direct route is through a land called Eternal Prussia, which is a dangerous war zone forever at war with a place called Little England, or travel through the seas of Gondol into Angria, which is a pretty civilized place. The problem with Angria is that they might see some NPCs from their past they were close with and have to relive those memories. And nobody really wants to do that. Just at that moment, an NPC greets them. His name is Sir Lane, and he was an Angrian knight. He was an adventurer, and he had a romantic relationship with Dominic's character, whom was female. They were romantic 25 years ago when they last played this game. However, Sir Lane has been in this world ever since. And back then, when Sir Lane rode off into the sunset, he told Dominic that he would not rest until he gazed upon her perfection once more. And Sir Lane dared Dominic to use his dictator power to make his words binding, and Dominic laughed and did so, not realizing the repercussions of this until now. Remember, Sir Lane would not rest until he gazed upon her perfection once more. Sir Lane tells Dominic, "The oath holds, there has been no rest. I died 3 years after we met. 3 years after that, my eyes rotted. Even though you are before me, I still cannot see you. My oath will never be filled. Sir Lane, even though he is dead and his flesh is rotting and his eyes have worms, cannot rest until he gazes upon Dominic's female form once again." Sir Lane attacks Dominic and starts choking him. Angela, as the Neo, shoots at Sir Lane, but Sir Lane keeps choking him. Isabel calls out to one of her other gods, this one called the Mourner. She asks the Mourner to give Sir Lane his sight back, and she will owe the Mourner. The Mourner complies, and Sir Lane's eyes magically regrow, and he can now see Dominic once again and says, "I see you. I am free. Curse your name." Sir Lane, he can now die, as his body starts to disintegrate, and 25 years of putrid flesh pour onto Dominic from Sir Lane's body. After that harrowing interaction, it just confirms to the group that they do not want to confront their past. They are not going to go through Angria. It looks like Eternal Prussia it is. Issue 3, Dungeons. Our party of heroes are walking through Eternal Prussia, where a World War I type battle is happening with trenches, but also large steampunk type robots, and also frickin' dragons wearing metal armor, and I think they're also robotic too. The party try to do a mix of running and fighting the dragon. One of Isabel's gods, Mistress Woe, gives Isabel a heads up that a barrage is coming. Isabel yells for the group to take cover. Everyone jumps for cover except for Chuck, whose luck powers save him even though he just stood there. The dragon then begins chasing Chuck, who begins running away. There is a dangerous gas engulfing the area, Dominic dives into a nearby trench, and he is separated from his friends. Dominic is in Little England's trenches, where he meets various soldiers. One of the soldiers' eyes is missing, but Dominic learns that that soldier was a hero, and he kept getting out of the trenches and running through the poisonous gas to grab his fellow soldiers and bring them back to safety. Eventually, the man's eyes burned away from the poison and they ran down his cheeks like tears, and he went blind. Yet still, he would keep going up and saving more soldiers. He would even do it by touch. Dominic then meets another soldier who is married with a wife and kids whom he loves. And that soldier asks Dominic with his dying breath to write a letter to his wife and kids that he knows he will never get a chance to see grow. He also asks Dominic to deliver it. Later on, while Dominic is going through the trenches, he meets another man smoking a pipe. That man appears to be J.R.R. Tolkien, writer of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Tolkien claims to be the warden of this hell, the master of this realm. He cannot leave. The two talk. Eventually, Tolkien takes the letter that Dominic wrote for the dying soldier to give to his family, and Tolkien whistles and summons a giant bird and gives the bird the message to deliver to that man's family. After some more time in the trenches, eventually, Matt, the Grief Knight, finally finds Dominic. Tolkien is gone by this time. Matt says that they need to get out of here. The dragon is coming. Isabel is injured, and Angela is out of her gold for tricks, and Chuck's luck is only going to go so far. Dominic tells Matt, if you were sad enough, you could kill the dragon. Matt, he refuses for Dominic to use that voice power on him again. Dominic, he says he won't, but he instead tells Matt the sad story of the various soldiers he met. The one with no eyes running into the gas to save his comrades, the dying soldier writing a letter to his family that he will never see again, and Matt eventually grows sad enough from that, and his sword powers up. Dominic tells him, now, kill that dragon. Do you think I need the voice to make someone feel miserable here? Matt, he gets out of the trench and he goes and fights the dragon, and with his powered sword, he slays it. Finally, with the dragon dead, Chuck and Isabel and Angela show up. Isabel tells the group, we need to find somewhere safe. I have to settle my debts with the gods so they'll patch me up. The only place safe nearby is Glasstown. We have to take a detour. They all begin traveling there to Glasstown. Elsewhere, that giant bird that was carrying the message got shot down, and the enemy retrieves the message of the dying soldier. A general on that side dismisses the letter as propaganda and burns it, and he continues sending more of his men into battle. Issue 4. The Inn. Every good D&D campaign needs some time in a tavern/inn. Our party travels on and approaches the city of Glasstown. It looks ominous from afar. It is enclosed in a gigantic shield shaped like a D20 die. They all comment on how Saul must have been busy designing things like this city. As they approach the border, they are worried they will not be allowed to pass through the shield. But a guard comes over, and he recognizes them. He shouts out to his people, "It's them, the Paragons! Open up!" Our party of heroes get invited into the city of Glasstown, and the townspeople are throwing rose petals in the air to greet them, and they wave from the windows as our heroes walk through the city. However, we see statues of Saul are around. They are still under his control. Our party gets brought to a local inn/tavern. There they are told, "Welcome, Paragons! You have returned to the land of Dai at last. The prophecy will be fulfilled. Will you truly deliver us from the dominion of the Devil Boy?" Chuck replies, "Hell yes, the geeky Grandmaster, we're gonna kick his ass." It does seem like the townspeople are on our hero's side and not Saul's. Isabel, she is not well, still injured from her time in Eternal Prussia, and she needs to talk to her gods to heal her. She asks their escort, the Chamberlain, to be brought to the Temple of the Mourner immediately. While she goes and does that, the Chamberlain tells the others to enjoy the city. He will find them later when he finds more about the Grandmaster. Dominic, Angela, Chuck, and Matt, they go to the tavern and they drink and hang out with some friendly dwarves. Meanwhile, Isabel is talking to one of her gods, the Mourner, in the Mourner's temple. The Mourner has healed Isabel, but the Mourner is asking for something in return. Isabel is brought to a room of people, and she is told to read to them. When she starts reading, she realizes that she is reading her diary entries to these strangers. Some of the very sad, emotional entries she wrote in that diary. She really doesn't want to continue reading this, but the Mourner encourages her to do so. She says, "This here is wisdom, please. It changed our lives. Such vulnerability, such strength. We need you. Save us." Eventually, Isabel continues reading to the people, and the Mourner is now satisfied with Isabel and will help her on any future requests she may have. Back at the tavern, the rest of the party continues drinking with the dwarves and they share stories. One dwarf tells a story about how cruel this new Grandmaster Saul is. Saul, the new Grandmaster, he forged a new rule that any time mages wished to cast spells, they would lose a memory of something in their past. So one day this mage, he would often try to not use his spells, but his children were taken from him, and they were transformed into a many-headed monster, and they were spirited away. So the mage, he pursued his children. He cast a spell that would freeze a river, that way he could cross it. However, by casting that spell, he lost a memory of blossoms falling on his wedding day. The mage, he entered a dungeon and fought many fallen there. He cast many spells to defeat the fallen, spells like firebolts and whatnot. Each spell cast, a memory was lost. Eventually, the mage arrived and he found his children in a cage. He sees that his children were turned into this many-headed beast. The mage cast a simple spell to free them from the cage, opening the lock. But by casting that spell, the memory that this monster was actually his children was gone. So the mage, he no longer remembered that this Hydra was his kids. So what did the mage do? Well, he did what any hero would do when facing off against a monster. He killed the beast. When the mage returned home and told his friends what had happened, his friends told him, "Oh no, you do realize you killed your children." The mage, he was distraught, and he plucked out his eyes in woe. The dwarf finished his tale. The dwarf then demanded another tale from one of the group. Matthew, the Grief Knight, tells the story of his mother dying of illness when he was just a boy. After that story is done, Chuck comments, "Wow, Matt, you really know how to bring a party down." They all drink some more, and they are a little tipsy. Chuck asks Dominic, who is a female character in The World of Die, "Hey Dominic, dictator, you spent all your time here swanning around in your fancy ball gowns and it never bothered you. You never seem to be interested in boys in the real world, except in here. What's going on with that?" Before Dominic can answer, Isabel arrived. Isabel is now in good health. She says that she made up with her gods. She explains, "I've done the rounds. Mistress Woe is being weird. She's given me all, oh, don't worry, you'll pay me back in your own time. And the Mourner, she made me read to a bunch of folks. It was intense. But yeah, I think we're good now." Isabel, who overheard Chuck's question, would also like an answer on Dominic. Dominic, he refuses. He says, "If I wanted to talk about anything, do you think I'd talk about it with you?" Angela tells the group to leave her brother alone. But then Angela, she starts talking about her own issues, and she starts getting real sad. She talks about her failed marriage in the outside world, and her girlfriend who dumped her, and her kids who are probably wondering where she is. She says that she always picked the worst romantic partners. Chuck asks, Was it so bad to date me? Angela and Chuck must have dated when they were trapped in this world all those years ago. Angela shoots back at Chuck. Yes, it was. You were a shitty first boyfriend. Chuck, actually feeling a little bit bad, replies, Yeah, I was. I'm sorry. Angela also states that she is sad because there is one of her Neo tools that she has not used since returning to these lands. It is a power that summons a robotic version of her dog. Angela is worried about summoning the dog, though, she says. If I don't get fair gold every day, I'll have to watch him die again. I want him so badly, just one more time, but oh god, I should try it. I should. One of the dwarves gives her some fair gold. He says that he would only waste it on drink. He would be honored for her to have it. Angela, she accepts the gold and she powers herself up and she summons her dog named Case. She then pets and hugs her dog. She says, Oh, it's so stupid. It's all so stupid and small, but I'm so happy. Eventually, the Chamberlain arrives back, and he tells them what he has found out about how they can get to the Grandmaster. He says, Adventurers, I'm sorry, I have ill tidings. The route to the Grandmaster is closed. We have studied the paths and consulted ancient wisdom. There may be a way, though it may be perilous. You will need 3 keys, and each key is at the bottom of a dungeon, each guarded by 12 perils, etc., etc., etc. Afterwards, once the Chamberlain is gone and our heroes are alone, they discuss, and they are pissed. 3 dungeons, each guarded by 12 perils? They will be here forever! Chuck comments, on top of all that, it's a shitty story too. Saul was always a railroader. This is a D&D reference. It means when the dungeon master is not really letting the players choose how to solve a problem and instead forces them down a certain predetermined path, thus putting them on a railroad. Isabel expresses her worries that even if they do all this convoluted stuff and get these 3 keys, Saul might throw in another twist. And even if they do get to him, he will be in his stronghold, with God knows what waiting for them, and they might not even be able to defeat him. The masters are always strongest in their homes. Angela says that they did defeat the previous Grandmaster last time. Isabel replies, Yes, we did. With Saul on our side, he could break the rules like the Grandmaster, but now the rules are entirely Saul's. Dominic cuts in and says, Then we stop playing his game. Look at Glasstown. Saul worked so hard on building it. I bet he'll come to us if we destroy it. Issue 5, Premise Rejection. Dominic remembers a memory of him as a child playing with Saul. They were playing with some blocks and Saul built a fancy castle. And Dominic smiled and told Saul, Wow, this must have taken you ages. You used all the pieces. Wow, that's skill. Dominic, he went to start taking it apart and asked, What are you going to build next? Saul grew cold and said, No, you don't take it apart. It's finished. This memory from Dominic's childhood showcases how pissed Saul is going to be if they destroy something he worked so hard to build. In Glasstown now, in the present day, the party of heroes are trying to figure out how to destroy Glasstown. They don't know how real this world is, so they don't want to just have all the innocents in Glasstown die. So they are going to try to find a way to destroy Glasstown, but evacuate the townspeople alive. Dominic speaks to the Chamberlain in private. He uses the dictator voice power on the Chamberlain, and he says, All your heart leans toward me. By saying that, the Chamberlain is now forced to do as Dominic pleases. Dominic doesn't like using the voice in this way, but he feels that he has to. Dominic narrates, I'll free the Chamberlain from all of this when it's over. He'll remember everything and he'll never trust me or any of us again, but he'll live. Dominic has the Chamberlain then speak to all of the townspeople of Glasstown. The Chamberlain tells the crowd, "Great news! Lady Isabel here has a message for all of us. The whole population of Glasstown Confederacy must gather in the Temple of the Mourner. Attendance is mandatory. Mandatory, I say!" All of the townspeople begin heading into the Temple of the Mourner, where they will be safe. Angela, the cyberpunk character, she infiltrates some machines in Eternal Prussia, in their main system, and she hacks into them, and she gives them the order to attack Glasstown. So now some of the robot dragons are headed toward the city to destroy it. Within Glasstown, Dominic and Matt descend into this secluded area where a magical core is. If they destroy this magical core, it should help topple the shield that guards the city. The core is guarded by some robots. Dominic uses the voice on Matt to make him sad. Dominic says, "Children with no father, wife with no husband, no explanation, no resolution, forever." Matt, struck with grief, uses his powered blades and slays the guards, and he destroys the core. The dome protecting Glasstown shatters, and the Eternal Prussia robot dragons, hacked by Angela, start attacking the city. Isabel, in the Temple of the Mourner with all of the townspeople, asks another god for help. This god is called Skywatcher. She asks Skywatcher to help save these innocent people who will all die unless he helps. Skywatcher will help. He creates a portal that will take the civilians somewhere else, somewhere safe. Isabel tells the townspeople to go. Eventually, Saul, the Grandmaster, arrives. He is furious that his old friends have destroyed his city, which he built. Saul says, "What have you done? I did all this work for you, you ungrateful... Do you think this was easy? You're ruining the game!" Chuck replies, "Yeah, but the game, it kinda sucks." Saul, the Grandmaster, has the ability to tweak some rules of the game. He says, "Anything that flies now freezes." So, by saying that, he has temporarily paused the dragons from destroying Glasstown further. Saul then says, "No dictatorship during daytime in Glasstown." This will stop Dominic from being able to use his voice powers for now. Dominic figures that Saul is now at the edge of his resources by using all these abilities, and he is now a little bit weak. Angela's dog, Case, bites Saul. Dominic tells Saul that they have to go home now. He knows that Saul deep down feels the same way. Dominic, he says, "I've been paying attention. The knight with the empty eye sockets, the little Englander with the molten eyes, the golems with no eyes at all. You've been trying to tell us how afraid you are, and I get it, but we're with you and you won't be alone anymore." Saul, weaker, says, "This is all I have. Don't go, stay." Dominic replies, "I can't stay. I don't trust myself here. I have to go. We have to go." Saul says, "Free the flyers." So Saul has now reversed the spell that was freezing the dragons, and the dragons can move. And Saul, he has some more of his powers back now. Saul, he begins attacking the group some more. He yells at them, "I made all of this for you!" Dominic is forced to strike Saul. He uses an ability he has called Death Touch, which is like a short dagger, and with this Death Touch, he kills Saul with it. Isabel, Angela, Matt, and Chuck are a little shocked that Dominic just killed their friend. Dominic tells the group, "I said I would do anything to get us back. Saul's gone. Now the party is unanimous. We can go home. Judge me when we're all back. Now make the damn wish. The game is over." Our group of heroes hold hands, and they begin wishing to all go back home. Matt, he makes the wish. Angela, she also makes the wish. Chuck, he starts making the wish, but he stops, and he asks, "Are we really rushing into this? I mean, I can do pull-ups again. I like doing pull-ups. And elvish chicks. There's nothing like an elvish chick." Matt tells Chuck, that this is a bad time to make jokes. We're in the middle of a war zone. Just make the wish so they can go home. Chuck, he starts making the argument for staying in this world. He says, "Who's making jokes? Compared to you all, I've got a great life back home. But compared to this world, why not stay here?" Isabel chimes in. She actually thinks that they should stay here as well. She says, "The Grandmaster is gone, but we've destroyed a city. These people need us as much as the people at home. We said we'd treat everyone here like they're real, and this is a humanitarian disaster." They all start arguing. Dominic figures with Saul dead, his powers have returned, and he can start using the voice to compel Chuck and Isabel into taking everybody home. But Chuck points a pistol at Dominic and tells him, "You open your mouth again and I shoot you. We've seen what you do to people who disagree with you." Isabel, she calls her god, Skywatcher, and asks Skywatcher to get her and Chuck out of here. Skywatcher comes down and takes the two of them away. The party has now been split, and they can no longer go home if they are not together, and they do not all wish in unison to leave. Dominic, Matt, and Angela's dog, Case, remain. That is when Saul wakes up. He is a fallen now, like an undead zombie kind of. Saul, as a fallen, tells the group, "You killed me. Dead now, so yes, I am fallen. You never did work it out. All the fallen here in this world, they're everyone who came here from our world and died. They all start like I am, but diminish until they are just empty need, brainless, envious husks that know but one thing. If we kill the players, we can live again." Angela, she casts a spell that locks Saul down. Dominic and Angela and Matt discuss what to do. Firstly, they should get out of here before the dragons get bored with destroying the buildings. And they have to get to Isabel and Chuck. They have to make them see sense. That way they can finally go home and leave. Angela asks, we all have to want to go home, but if they are somehow gone, their vote doesn't matter? Dominic replies, "If they all die, then we can go home." Saul, as a fallen, chimes in and says, "Die. Still lying. Not the correct word, never was. The word is murder." And with that cliffhanger, we end Volume 1 of Die. Alright, so that was Die Volume 1. I hope you all enjoyed this. Next week, I'm going to be covering a book called Something is Killing the Children, written by James Tynion IV. And the week after that, I'm going to be covering another horror comic for the rest of this month. But whatever video kind of does the best and has the most demand, I may cover the entire series of. So, might be Die, might be something else. We'll see. But yeah, Die Volume 1, I thought this was a great introductory volume. The artwork was beautiful. I really like how this book looks. And I thought the story and concept were really interesting and very unique. Having these kids now as adults back in this world, and their friend has been stuck there for 25 years, and we see how it's kind of warped his mind. And I thought it was a really cool twist how they decide to break this glass town as a way to get Saul to come to them. That was all great stuff. Yeah, really cool book, really interesting. I'm highly into it. I'm going to give this one an 8.5 out of 10. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be back next week with a new book.